My father stopped me the day before my wedding, and the way he said my name made my chest go quiet. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was just wrong. I was stepping out of my office building, my heels clicking the way they always did on that uneven patch of concrete by the curb. The air smelled like hot dust and copier paper. Someone was arguing into a phone behind me. A delivery truck hissed as it braked. It was an ordinary afternoon, the kind that passes without asking permission. And then my father said my name, not from behind, not from across the street, from right beside my car. I froze with my keys still in my hand. He stood there like he'd been standing for a while. His jacket was buttoned wrong, one button higher than it should have been. He did that sometimes when he was nervous, though he never admitted to being nervous about anything. His hair, usually combed back neat and flat, had a soft lift to it, like he'd run his fingers through it too many times. I smiled before I understood why my stomach felt hollow. "Dad," I said, "what are you doing here?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at my face, slowly, like he was checking that it was really me. Then he said very calmly, "Tomorrow, don't get in any car you didn't plan for." The words landed wrong, not heavy, just crooked. I laughed because that's what you do when something doesn't fit the shape of the day. "Okay," I said, "that's a strange way to say congratulations." He didn't smile. He stepped closer, lowering his voice even though no one was listening. "I'm serious," he said, "promise me." I felt a small irritation rise in my chest. Not anger, just that tight impatience that comes when someone pulls you out of your life without explanation. "Dad," I said gently, "it's my wedding tomorrow. I have a schedule down to the minute." "That's what worries me," he said. I opened my mouth to ask what he meant. He shook his head once. "Sharp, final, just promise me," he said. "No surprises, no last-minute rides, no changing plans." Something in his eyes flickered, not fear exactly, something older, like regret that had learned how to stand up straight. "I promise," I said, because it was easier than arguing in a parking lot with my father. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since morning. "Good," he said, "that's all." Then he stepped back, nodded once, and walked away toward the bus stop without looking back. I stood there for a long moment with my keys still pressed into my palm, listening to the city move around me like nothing had happened. The day before a wedding is supposed to feel light. Busy, yes, chaotic maybe, but light. Mine had been filled with small, familiar things. The florist calling to confirm the ivory roses. My mother texting me for the 4th time asking if I'd packed the pearl hairpins. My fiancé leaving a voicemail because he wasn't supposed to see me but still wanted to hear my voice. Normal things, safe things. I'd worked a half day at the office, mostly pretending to check emails while coworkers stopped by my desk with smiles and half hugs and stories about their own weddings. Someone had brought donuts. Someone else had joked that it wasn't too late to run. I smiled at all of it. I always smiled. My father wasn't supposed to be part of that day, not the office part. He lived across town. He hated driving during rush hour. He hated parking garages even more. If he showed up somewhere unannounced, it usually meant something practical. A document, a forgotten appointment, a favor he didn't want to ask over the phone, not warnings. At home that evening, my mother moved through the kitchen like a woman performing a ritual she'd practiced her whole life. She rinsed rice. She wiped an already clean counter. She adjusted a bowl of fruit no one was going to eat. "You look tired," she said without turning around. "I'm fine," I said. She glanced at me anyway, mothers always do. "Your father came home early," she said. "Did you see him?" "Yes," I said. I hesitated. "He came by my office?" Her hand paused over the sink. "Oh," she said, "that's unusual. He told me not to get in any car tomorrow that I didn't plan for." She turned then, slowly. Her face didn't change much, just a tightening around the mouth. A careful stillness. "Did he?" she said. "Is there something I should know?" I asked. She looked back at the sink. "No," she said. "Your father worries, especially when things are about to change." That answer slid neatly into place, too neatly. I let it go. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I listened to the house settle. The familiar creak near the hallway, the hum of the refrigerator, my phone lighting up with messages from friends who couldn't sleep either. I replayed my father's voice in my head. "Tomorrow, don't get in any car you didn't plan for." It sounded less like advice the more I thought about it. It sounded like a line drawn quietly in the sand. I fell asleep eventually, telling myself that parents sometimes sense danger where there is none. That weddings make people strange, that tomorrow would be loud and bright and ordinary. I didn't know yet how carefully the day had already been marked. The morning of my wedding arrived without ceremony, no thunder, no sign. Just light slipping through the curtains like it always had, pale and undecided. I woke before my alarm, my body already braced for a day that had been rehearsed too many times in my head. The house smelled faintly of cardamom and toast. Somewhere down the hall, a floorboard sighed under someone's careful step. I lay still, staring at the ceiling I'd stared at for 18 years and tried to remember the last morning that felt this quiet. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from my fiancé. Good morning, almost wife. I hope you slept. I didn't. I smiled, the kind of smile that lives only in the corners of your mouth. I typed back something light, something practiced. You'll survive. Eat something. Down the hall, my mother knocked once and entered without waiting. You're awake, she said, already moving to the closet. Good, the stylist will be here in an hour. She spoke like this was a business arrangement. Timed, controlled, safe. I sat up slowly, my feet touched the cold floor. Mom, I said, did Dad sleep? She paused just long enough for someone who knew her to notice. He was up early, she said. Went for a walk, that was new. My father did not go for walks, I nodded anyway. The morning unfolded the way mornings do when everyone is pretending not to feel too much. Coffee poured but barely sipped. A dress hung from the closet door like it was waiting for permission to exist. The stylist arrived with a rolling case that clicked over every crack in the driveway. Laughter came in bursts, then silence, then laughter again. At one point, as my hair was being pinned into place, I caught my mother watching me in the mirror, not admiring, measuring. As if she were trying to memorize the shape of my face. Are you all right? I asked. She smiled quickly. Of course, she said. I'm just thinking about how fast time moves. I believed her. Mostly by late morning, the house filled with voices, aunts, cousins. People who smelled like perfume and familiarity. Shoes kicked off near the door. Bags placed gently on chairs that had once held homework and laundry. My father stayed out of sight. I noticed it without wanting to. Every time someone asked where he was, my mother answered smoothly. He'll be here, she said. He's just handling something. Handling, such a vague word. When it was finally time to leave for the venue, everything moved faster. Dresses lifted. Lipstick reapplied. Someone clapped their hands and said, okay, cars are ready. Cars. The word brushed against something sharp inside me. I remembered my father's voice, not the words, the tone. Tomorrow, don't get in any car you didn't plan for. I had planned for this one. The white sedan my uncle had rented, my cousin driving, my mother beside me. Still, my chest tightened. Outside, the air was warmer than it should have been. The sky hung low and bright as if watching. I was halfway down the steps when I saw my father. He stood near the edge of the driveway, hands in his coat pockets, shoulders slightly hunched like the day before. He looked smaller somehow. Or maybe I was seeing him differently. He caught my eye, held it. Then, just barely, he shook his head. Once, my steps slowed. Dad. I said. My mother turned sharply. What is it? She asked. I need to talk to him, I said. Now, she said, already stressed. We're late. It'll take a minute. I walked toward him, the hem of my dress whispering against the concrete. When I reached him, he leaned in slightly like we were sharing a secret at a funeral. You promised, he said softly. I know, I said. This is the car. He glanced toward the sedan, toward my cousin waiting with the engine running. Plans change, he said. My heart beat louder. Dad, I said, keeping my voice calm. What's going on? He didn't answer right away. He looked past me toward the house, toward my mother standing rigid on the steps. After today, he said, things won't be the same. That's marriage, I said, trying to smile. He didn't return it. Listen to me, he said. There are moments in life where you get one chance to pause. This is one of them. I swallowed. Are you saying I shouldn't go? No, he said quickly. I'm saying you should go the way you decided. Nothing added, nothing improvised. My mother called my name. Coming, I said. I looked back at him. Will you be there? I asked. Yes, he said. I'll be there. I searched his face for something solid. Something I could name. I found only resolve. He stepped back. Go, he said. I turned and walked to the car. The door closed with a final hollow sound. As we pulled away, I looked back through the window. My father was still standing there, one hand raised, not in a wave exactly, more like a benediction. The drive to the venue passed in fragments. Red lights, a radio murmuring softly, my cousin tapping the steering wheel, My mother sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on mine. Her palm was colder than usual. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She squeezed my hand once, then let go. When we arrived, the place looked exactly like the photos. White chairs, soft music, flowers arranged with deliberate care, people moving with purpose but not urgency. A wedding. Everything unfolded as planned, guests seated, music started. I walked the aisle with my heart steadying itself with each step. My fiancé stood at the front, eyes shining. When he saw me, his breath caught in that familiar way that always made me feel chosen. For a moment, everything else receded, then I saw my father. He sat in the second row, alone, his posture straight, his gaze fixed on me not with pride but with something closer to vigilance. The ceremony began, words were spoken, promises exchanged. I answered when it was my turn. My voice didn't shake. When the officiant pronounced us married, the room exhaled. Applause rose like a wave. I smiled. I kissed my husband. And somewhere beneath the joy, beneath the music and the movement, a quiet certainty settled in my chest. Whatever my father had been guarding against had not passed. It had only been delayed. The first hint that something was wrong came after the applause faded. It wasn't dramatic. No gasps, no sudden silence. It was a pause. The kind that happens when people aren't sure which direction to move in next. My husband, my new husband, leaned toward me and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded, automatically. My smile was still in place, stretched gently across my face like fabric pinned too tight. "I'm perfect," I said. The word felt borrowed. We walked back down the aisle together, hands linked, cameras flashing. Everyone stood, everyone smiled. I did what brides are supposed to do. I looked forward, I waved. I laughed softly when someone shouted our names, but I could feel my father's eyes on my back. At the reception, the air changed, not sharply, just enough to notice if you were paying attention. Music played, but it felt slightly off-tempo. Conversations overlapped in strange ways. People kept checking their phones, then slipping them back into pockets like they'd touched something hot. My mother moved through the room with a grace that felt practiced too carefully. She smiled at guests. She adjusted place cards. She avoided standing still. I watched her from across the room while someone hugged me and told me how beautiful I looked. My father hadn't come to the head table. That was the first real break from the plan. "He'll join us later," my mother said quickly when I asked. I nodded, but something in her voice had thinned. Dinner was served, toasts began. My husband's brother stood up first, charming and loose, telling stories that made people laugh in the right places. Glasses clinked. Applause rose. Then it was my father's turn, except he didn't stand. The room waited. Someone coughed. The officiant glanced around, confused, then leaned toward my mother. She shook her head once. "No speech," she said softly. "We'll skip it." I felt my pulse tick faster. My husband squeezed my hand under the table. "You all right?" he whispered again. "Yes," I said again. I was lying better than I liked. After dinner, people began to move more freely. Music grew louder. Shoes came off. Laughter loosened. I danced with my husband, then with my friends, then with an aunt who smelled like rosewater and nostalgia. I kept scanning the room. My father was gone, not stepped outside. Not at the bar, gone. I found my mother near the back hallway, speaking quietly to a woman I didn't recognize. The woman wore a simple gray dress and no jewelry. Her posture was straight, alert. They stopped talking when they saw me. "Mom," I said, "where's Dad?" My mother inhaled through her nose. "He had to take care of something," she said. "Tonight?" I asked. "Yes." "What kind of something?" She met my eyes, and for a moment I thought she might tell me. Then music swelled from the speakers. Someone called my name. A photographer waved. "We'll talk later," she said. "Go, enjoy your wedding." That was the moment I understood, not the details, not the shape of it, just the truth that something had been kept from me on purpose. It happened during the cake cutting. The knife was in my hand. My husband's hand covered mine. Cameras flashed again. Someone shouted, "Kiss her!" And then the doors at the back of the hall opened. Not dramatically, not slammed. Opened. 2 men stepped inside, one in a dark suit, one in a uniform. The room didn't go silent all at once. Sound thinned in sections. Laughter fell away in pockets. A fork clinked against a plate. My husband stiffened beside me. "Who are they?" he whispered. I didn't answer, because I already knew this wasn't for us. The man in the suit scanned the room calmly, professionally. His eyes stopped on my mother. She closed her eyes just for a second, then she nodded. The man approached the front. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said, voice even, practiced. "May I speak to the bride's father?" My heart dropped so fast I felt dizzy. My mother began. The uniformed officer stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said gently, "we need to locate him." Every face turned toward me, toward my dress, my veil, my frozen smile. My husband's hand tightened. "What is this?" he asked louder now. The man in the suit looked at me, not unkindly. "Your father asked us to be here," he said. The room began to murmur. My mother walked forward slowly, like each step weighed more than the last. "He isn't here," she said. "He left earlier." The officer exchanged a glance with the man. "Then we'll need to speak with you," he said. Someone near the front whispered my name. I felt heat crawl up my neck. "Speak to her about what?" my husband asked. No one answered him. My mother turned to me then, really turned to me. Her face was pale, stripped of performance. "I wanted to protect you," she said quietly. "From what?" I asked. My voice sounded far away. The man in the suit cleared his throat. "Your father received credible information about a planned incident involving transportation connected to this event," he said. "Specifically, a vehicle change scheduled without your knowledge." The words stacked themselves without meaning. "An incident?" I repeated. My husband shook his head. "What are you talking about?" The officer spoke this time. "There was an attempt to manipulate wedding logistics," he said. "A last-minute offer of a ride, a deviation from the plan." I remembered my father's voice. "Tomorrow, don't get in any car you didn't plan for." My knees weakened. "Who?" I asked. The room held its breath. The man in the suit didn't answer right away. "Someone close," he said. "Someone trusted." My gaze drifted across familiar faces, smiling faces, faces that had hugged me hours ago. "No," I said, "that doesn't make sense." My mother stepped closer. "It was handled," she said quickly. "Your father made sure it was handled." "Handled how?" I asked. She swallowed. "He confronted them," she said. "He recorded everything. He handed it over." "And where is he now?" I asked. The officer lowered his voice. "Giving a statement," he said, "making sure no one else gets hurt." The word hurt landed cleanly. My husband looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You didn't know?" he asked. I shook my head. "No," I said, "I didn't know anything." The cake sat untouched between us. Perfect. White, cracking slightly under the heat of the lights. My wedding had not been interrupted by chaos. It had been interrupted by intention. Someone had planned to move me, redirect me, put me in a car I didn't plan for. And my father had stopped it quietly, before I ever knew it existed. The room didn't explode into panic. That's what surprised me later when I replayed it all in my head. No screaming, no running, no chaos worthy of headlines. Just confusion settling slowly like dust after something heavy has been moved. The music was turned off. Someone whispered to someone else. A chair scraped the floor too loudly. I stood there in my dress, hands still resting on the cake knife, feeling like I'd stepped out of my body and left it behind on the stage. My husband let go of my hand, not angrily, not deliberately. Like he needed both of his hands to hold onto something inside himself. "What kind of incident?" he asked again, quieter now. The man in the suit hesitated. Then he looked at me. "We believe someone intended to isolate you before the ceremony," he said. "Long enough to create confusion, panic, a delay. For what?" I asked. He didn't answer. My mother did. "For leverage," she said. The words sounded ugly in her mouth. "Leverage how?" I asked. She closed her eyes again, longer this time. "They wanted you to miss the ceremony," she said, "to make it look like you changed your mind." A low murmur moved through the guests. "That's insane," my husband said. "Why would anyone do that?" No one responded immediately. Then from somewhere near the back a voice spoke. Soft, measured, "Because weddings make people desperate." I turned. It was my aunt, my father's younger sister. She stood with her arms folded, her expression unreadable. She had always been quiet at family gatherings, observant. The kind of woman who listened more than she spoke. Desperate for what? I asked. She met my eyes. "For control," she said. The man in the suit nodded slightly, as if confirming something without words. "The individual involved had personal and financial motivations," he said. "Your father uncovered communications, recorded conversations, evidence of intent." "Who?" my husband demanded. "Just say who." The officer glanced at the suit, then back at my mother. "It's better if this conversation continues privately," he said. "No," I said. The word came out sharper than I intended. "I've been protected enough today," I said. "I'm done being the last person to know." The room went still. My mother looked at me like she was seeing the woman I'd become, not the child she still wanted to guard. She nodded once. It was your cousin, she said. The name didn't register at first. My cousin, I repeated. The one driving the spare car, she said. The one who offered to take you separately because he said there was a delay with the main vehicle. My stomach lurched. That never happened, I said. Because your father intervened, she said. I thought of the white sedan. Of my cousin tapping the steering wheel, of the engine already running. That's not possible, my husband said. Why would he? He owes money, my aunt said, more than anyone realized. The man in the suit continued calmly. He was approached with an offer, he said. If he could create doubt just enough to disrupt the ceremony, it would trigger certain legal conditions tied to a trust. My ears rang. What trust? I asked. My mother looked away. The one your father set up years ago, she said, for you. The word years hung between us. I didn't know about any trust, I said. You weren't supposed to, she said. My father's voice echoed in my head. After today, things won't be the same. What conditions? My husband asked. The man in the suit chose his words carefully. If the wedding had been delayed or canceled under ambiguous circumstances, he said, the trust would have been temporarily frozen pending review. Which would give him access, my aunt said. Enough access to solve his problem. The room felt smaller. He would have just driven me around. I asked long enough, the officer said. Traffic, a breakdown, a wrong turn. And if I panicked, I asked. That would have been enough, the man said. I pictured myself in the back seat, veil wrinkled, phone dying, clock ticking. I pressed a hand to my mouth. My cousin was no longer in the room. Where is he? I asked. Left, my aunt said. When your father confronted him how? I asked. She hesitated. Quietly, she said, with a recorder in his pocket. I could see it then. My father standing somewhere nondescript, a parking lot, a sidewalk, his voice steady, asking questions he already knew the answers to. Tomorrow, don't get in any car you didn't plan for. He knew yesterday, I said. My mother nodded. He came to me last night, she said, told me everything. And you didn't tell me, I said, tears gathered in her eyes. I wanted you to have one night of peace, she said, just one. My husband looked between us, stunned. And you? He asked me. You would have trusted him? I didn't answer right away. Yes, I said finally, I would have. The truth landed hard. The officer cleared his throat. We've ensured there's no immediate risk, he said, but we recommend discretion. Let the day finish. Finish as if it hadn't already split cleanly down the middle. The guests were gently guided back to their tables. Music resumed, lower this time. Conversations restarted, though none of them sounded the same. My father still wasn't there. Can I see him? I asked. He'll come when he's done, my mother said. He didn't want to distract you. I almost laughed. I sat down eventually, ate 2 bites of food without tasting it, smiled when people approached, their eyes full of questions they didn't dare ask. Inside, something had shifted, not broken, shifted. Trust, once bent, never returns to its original shape. When my father finally arrived, it was quiet, no announcement, no attention. He stood at the edge of the room, his jacket now properly buttoned, his face tired but calm. I stood. We met halfway. He didn't hug me at first. He looked at me the way he had the day before, like he was checking that I was still whole. I'm sorry, he said. For what? I asked. For knowing, he said, and not telling you sooner. You saved me, I said. He shook his head. I just reminded you to trust your plans, he said. I hugged him then, tight, brief. The room watched without understanding, and I realized something as I rested my cheek against his shoulder. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the moment the truth had finally come into the light. After my father arrived, the wedding continued the way rivers do after a stone is thrown into them. The surface smoothed out. The current did not. People danced again. Glasses refilled. Someone turned the music up a notch as if volume alone could stitch the evening back together. From a distance, it looked like joy. From inside it, everything felt carefully managed, like a smile held too long. My husband stayed close to me, closer than before. His hand found the small of my back whenever someone approached, grounding me, reminding me where I was. But I could feel the questions building in him, the weight of information he hadn't known he'd need to carry on his wedding day. You okay? He asked for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. I am, I said. It wasn't a lie, it just wasn't the whole truth. I was okay in the way people are okay after narrowly avoiding something they don't yet fully understand. Shaken but upright, breathing but carefully. My father sat at a small table near the edge of the room, speaking quietly with the man in the suit. Every so often he glanced toward me, not anxiously, just checking. At one point I excused myself and stepped outside. The air was cooler now. Evening had settled in, bringing with it the smell of grass and distant traffic. I stood near the side of the building, my dress gathered in my hands, and let myself feel what I'd been postponing. Fear came first, then anger, then something heavier. Betrayal doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just sits down beside you and waits to be acknowledged. My cousin, someone who'd grown up in the same rooms, who'd eaten at the same holidays, who hugged me that morning and told me everything looked perfect. I pressed my palm to my chest and focused on breathing. Behind me, the door opened softly. My father stepped out. "I thought you might need air," he said. "I did," I said. We stood side by side without touching, the way we used to when I was a teenager and didn't want comfort, just presence. "I should have told you sooner," he said again. "You told me the only thing that mattered," I said. "Not to get in the car." He nodded. "I hoped that would be enough," he said. "How did you know?" I asked. He took a moment before answering. "Your cousin came to me 3 days ago," he said. Asked questions that didn't sound like questions. He wanted to know the schedule, the backups, who was driving whom. "And that worried you," I said. "I pretended it didn't," he said. But then he called again. This time with suggestions. I waited. He said weddings are chaotic, my father continued. That sometimes the bride gets overwhelmed, that a quiet drive can help. I closed my eyes. "And you?" I asked. "I listened," he said, "and I recorded." I looked at him then. Really looked at the lines around his eyes, at the steadiness in his posture. "When did you realize what he was planning?" I asked. "When he mentioned the trust," my father said. The word landed between us again. "You really set one up," I said. "Yes," he said. "Long ago." "Why?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "Because love doesn't protect people from needing protection," he said. I swallowed. "Mom knew," I said. He nodded. "She always knows," he said. We stood quietly for a while. "Are they going to press charges?" I asked. "That's not up to me," he said, "but there will be consequences." "Like what?" I asked. He looked toward the darkened parking lot. "Loss of access," he said. "Loss of trust, loss of family." That last one hurt the most. Inside, the music shifted to something slow. A song I recognized from childhood car rides. "Do you regret it?" I asked. "Stopping it the way you did?" He turned to me. "Do you regret being safe?" he asked. I shook my head. "Then neither do I," he said. The reception ended earlier than planned. Not officially. No one announced it. It just wound down. People hugged longer, spoke softer, left in small groups instead of waves. My cousin never returned. I wasn't surprised. As we said goodbye to the last guests, my husband leaned close. "We need to talk," he said gently. "I know," I said. We talked later that night in the quiet of the hotel room after the dress was hung carefully and the makeup washed away. We talked sitting on the edge of the bed, shoes kicked off, reality settling in. "I didn't know," he said again, "about the trust, about any of it." "I didn't either," I said. He looked at me thoughtfully. "Does that bother you?" he asked. "That my father planned for something I didn't know existed?" I asked. "Yes," he said. I thought about it. "No," I said. "It bothers me that someone close to us saw my life as leverage." He nodded slowly. "I'm glad he stopped it," he said. "So am I said. Silence settled between us, not uncomfortable, just full. "You could have been hurt," he said quietly. I reached for his hand. "But I wasn't," I said. The days after the wedding were quieter than I expected. There were no dramatic follow-ups, no public fallout, just small shifts in the family landscape. My cousin stopped calling, then stopped answering. My aunt, his mother, came by one afternoon. She sat at the kitchen table and cried without speaking. I sat with her, passed her tissues. Didn't ask for explanations she wasn't ready to give. My father finalized paperwork. My mother rearranged routines. Life adjusted itself around the truth. One evening, about a week later, I sat with my father on the porch of my new home. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the yard. "You did the right thing," I said. He looked at me. "I know," he said, "but right things still cost something." "What did it cost you?" I asked. He considered. "A relationship I thought was solid," he said. "An illusion," I nodded. "I lost one too," I said. He glanced at me. "Yes," he said, "but you gained clarity." That was true. Trust, I learned, isn't just about believing people mean well. It's about knowing who stands steady when something valuable is at stake. My wedding day didn't turn into a tragedy, but it did turn into a lesson. One I carry quietly, one that lives in the way I plan. The way I listen, the way I pause when something feels just slightly wrong. And sometimes when I get into a car, any car, I hear my father's voice again. Calm, certain, tomorrow don't get in any car you didn't plan for. Marriage doesn't begin with certainty. That was the first quiet truth I learned in the weeks after the wedding. It begins with adjustment, with small negotiations that no one warns you about. Which light stays on at night? Who reaches for the coffee first? How silence is interpreted when it stretches a little longer than expected. But layered beneath all of that for us was something else, awareness. My husband didn't say it outright, but I could feel him recalibrating, watching more closely, asking questions he'd never needed to ask before. Not because he distrusted me, but because the world had shown itself capable of moving sideways when you weren't looking. One evening, while we were unpacking boxes we hadn't bothered to open before the wedding, he held up a framed photo of my cousin and me from years ago. "We should put this somewhere," he said, then paused, "or maybe not yet." I studied the photo, two younger versions of ourselves, arms slung around each other, smiling without effort. "Let's put it away," I said, not to hide it, just to let it rest. He nodded, relieved not to be the one to suggest it. That's how healing worked for us. Quiet agreements, gentle pacing. The first real ripple came at a family dinner, not a holiday, just a Sunday, the kind of gathering that's supposed to feel ordinary. My aunt, the same one who'd spoken up at the reception, hosted it. She invited everyone, even those who hadn't been speaking. My cousin did not come. His absence filled the room more than his presence ever had. We ate. We talked about work, about traffic, about a neighbor's dog. No one said his name until my aunt finally did. "He's staying with a friend," she said suddenly, her voice steady but her hands shaking slightly. "Out of town." No one responded. "He says he needs space," she continued. Still no one spoke. I set my fork down. "Space is sometimes what accountability looks like," I said gently. She looked at me, eyes wet. "I raised him better than this," she said. "I believe you," I said. That was the truth. Villains are rarely born villains. They are people who make a series of choices when pressure meets weakness. After dinner, my father pulled me aside. "There may be a hearing," he said. "Nothing dramatic, just procedure." "I'll go if you want me to," I said. He shook his head. "No," he said. "You've already been part of this more than you should have been." "But it's my life," I said. He looked at me carefully. "And it's because it's your life that I want it protected from unnecessary damage," he said. I understood then that protection doesn't end when danger passes. Sometimes it's about limiting exposure afterward. The hearing came and went quietly. No courtroom spectacle, no raised voices, just statements, documents, consequences written in formal language that softened nothing. My cousin lost access to the trust permanently. He signed agreements, promised distance. The family absorbed it the way families do, with divided reactions. Some thought my father had gone too far. Some thought he hadn't gone far enough. Most stayed silent. I didn't argue with any of them. I didn't need to. Because the truth had a way of settling into the spaces where denial used to live. One afternoon, weeks later, my mother came over unannounced. She brought soup. She always did when she didn't know how else to say something. We sat at the kitchen table, steam rising between us. "I should have told you sooner," she said again. "I know," I said. She stirred her soup without eating. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that if you knew, you'd hesitate. That doubt would creep into a day that was supposed to be clean." "And instead," I said softly, "the doubt came later." She nodded. "Yes," she said, "but you were already married, already standing in your own life." I considered that. "Do you think that matters?" I asked. She looked at me with a small, sad smile. "I think timing is everything," she said, "but so is resilience." She reached across the table and took my hand. "You handled this with grace," she said. "I learned it from you," I said. That made her laugh, though tears followed quickly after. The hardest moment came unexpectedly. I was driving home from work one evening, stopped at a red light when a car pulled up beside me. Same color, same model, different driver. My breath caught. My hands tightened on the wheel. Nothing happened. The light turned green. We drove on in separate directions. But my heart took longer to follow. That night I told my husband. He listened, didn't interrupt, didn't minimize. "I'll walk you to the car when you want," he said. "No questions." "Thank you," I said. I didn't need the escort every time, but knowing it was there mattered. Months passed. Life steadied. The story became something people referred to in lowered voices than not at all. My cousin sent one letter, just one, no excuses, no justifications, just an apology written carefully as if he'd rewritten it many times. I didn't respond right away. When I did, it was brief. I accept your apology, I need distance. I wish you accountability, that was all. I felt lighter after sending it. Forgiveness, I learned, doesn't always mean reconnection. Sometimes it means release without return. On the anniversary of my wedding, my husband and I took a drive. No destination, just motion. At one point he asked, "Do you ever think about what could have happened?" "Yes," I said, "but not with fear anymore." "With what then?" he asked. "With clarity," I said. "And gratitude?" He smiled. "That sounds like you," he said. As we drove, I realized something else. My father's warning hadn't just been about a car, it had been about autonomy, about consent, about staying aligned with choices made in calm moments, not manipulated ones. That lesson stayed with me, at work, in relationships, in silence. And when my father called me one afternoon, his voice lighter than it had been in months, I knew something had finally settled. "I'm proud of you," he said. "For what?" I asked. "For not letting this harden you," he said. I smiled. "You taught me that too," I said. "Time has a way of smoothing sharp edges without erasing the cut." By the second year of my marriage, the story of my wedding day had become something people referenced indirectly. Not that day, but everything that happened around it. The language softened, the details blurred. What remained was a general understanding that boundaries had been crossed and that they had not been forgiven lightly. Family gatherings changed shape, smaller tables, shorter visits, more intention. No one said it out loud, but we were all learning how to exist in a version of the family that no longer relied on pretending. My father aged a little that year, not visibly, not dramatically, just in the way men do when vigilance finally loosens its grip. He laughed more easily, he slept better, he stopped checking locks twice before bed. One afternoon, I visited my parents' house alone. My mother was out running errands. My father sat at the kitchen table with a stack of papers, his reading glasses low on his nose. "Am I interrupting?" I asked. He looked up and smiled. "Never," he said. "Sit." I poured myself a glass of water and sat across from him. "Are those trust documents?" I asked. He nodded. "I'm simplifying things," he said, "making sure everything is clear." "For who?" I asked. "For everyone," he said. "Clarity prevents imagination." That sounded like him. I watched his hands as he aligned the papers carefully, edges straight. "Did it scare you?" I asked suddenly. He paused. "What?" he asked. "That day," I said, knowing what could have happened. He took his time answering. "Yes," he said, "but not the way you think." I waited. "I wasn't afraid of the plan succeeding," he said. "I was afraid of what it would do to you afterward." I frowned slightly. "If you'd been delayed," he continued, "even if nothing else had gone wrong, doubt would have been planted, and doubt has a long reach." I thought about that, about how even now I pause sometimes before trusting a smooth explanation. "You think I would have blamed myself," I said. "I think you would have replayed it," he said, "over and over, wondering where you misread something." I swallowed. "That's true," I said. He nodded once. "Parents don't stop disasters," he said. "They try to prevent the second one." That stayed with me. The real confrontation came later than I expected, nearly 3 years after the wedding. I was grocery shopping when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer. Almost. "Hello?" I said. There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in years. "It's me," my cousin said. I stood still between the produce aisle and the refrigerated section, the hum of the store filling the silence. "I didn't know if you'd answer," he said. "I almost didn't," I said honestly. "I'm not calling to ask for anything," he said quickly. I wanted to tell you I'm in town." I closed my eyes briefly. "Why?" I asked. "My mother's sick," he said. "Nothing life-threatening, but I came to help." I exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "I'm not calling for forgiveness," he said. "I know I'm not owed that." I leaned against the cart. "Then why are you calling?" I asked. "Because I've spent a long time understanding what I did," he said. "And I needed you to know that I understand it wasn't just a bad idea." I stayed quiet. "It was a violation," he said, "of your autonomy, your trust, your safety." The words landed carefully like he'd practiced them. "I don't expect a response," he said. "I just didn't want to leave town again without saying that." I took a breath. "I appreciate the accountability," I said. "That matters." "I won't contact you again," he said. "Unless you ask." "Thank you," I said. When the call ended, my hands were shaking. Not from anger, from release. Some closures don't come with reconciliation, they come with recognition. That night I told my husband. He listened quietly, then asked, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. "Lighter," I said, not because he called, but because he didn't minimize. "That's rare," he said. "Yes," I said, "and it matters." We sat together on the couch, the house quiet around us. "I'm proud of you," he said. "For what?" I asked. "For not confusing access with entitlement," he said. I smiled. That sounded like something my father would say. The public consequence didn't come as gossip or scandal, it came as distance. My cousin wasn't invited to weddings, wasn't included in group plans, was spoken of neutrally, carefully. He became a lesson people didn't announce but understood. And strangely, that felt appropriate. Justice doesn't always require spectacle, sometimes it just redraws the map. On the 4th anniversary of my wedding, my parents came over for dinner. We ate slowly, talked about small things, laughed when my husband burned the garlic bread. At one point, my father raised his glass. "To plans," he said. We all laughed. "To plans," we echoed. Later, as I cleared the table with my mother, she touched my arm. "Do you ever wish we'd told you everything from the beginning?" she asked. I thought carefully. "No," I said. "I wish the world didn't require secrets for protection, but given the choice," I met her eyes. "I'm glad I walked into my marriage steady," I said. She nodded. "That's all I wanted," she said. As the years went on, I noticed something else. I became the person people came to when something felt off. At work, among friends, in quiet conversations, they didn't always know why, they just sensed I would listen without dismissing. One colleague once said, "You have a good radar." I smiled. "I trust patterns," I said. Because that's what the day before my wedding taught me. Danger doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it asks politely. Sometimes it wears a familiar face. And safety doesn't always come from certainty. Sometimes it comes from pausing, from holding to a plan. From listening when someone you trust says, "Promise me." On a quiet evening years later, I sat with my father again, this time on my own porch. "You know," he said, "I used to worry I overstepped." I turned to him. "Do you still?" I asked. He shook his head. "No," he said, "because you're not afraid." I thought about that. He was right. I wasn't afraid, I was aware. And there's a difference. When I think back on my wedding day now, I don't remember the flowers first. I remember my father's voice. Not loud, not urgent, just steady. "Tomorrow, don't get in any car you didn't plan for." For a long time, I thought that sentence saved me from a single moment. A wrong turn, a delay, a kind of harm that never came close enough to touch me. But years later, I understand it differently. He wasn't warning me about a car. He was warning me about surrendering my direction. Life has a way of offering detours that look helpful. Familiar faces, reasonable explanations, gentle pressure wrapped in concern. And if you're not careful, you can wake up far from where you meant to go, wondering when you agreed to change course. That day taught me something I carry into every part of my life. Pause when something feels rushed. Hold to decisions made in clarity, not confusion. Pay attention to the people who speak softly but mean what they say. My marriage didn't begin with perfection. It began with awareness, and that awareness has been a gift. I don't live in fear. I don't second guess every kindness. But I do listen more closely now, to patterns. To tone, to the quiet warnings that arrive without drama. Sometimes love looks like protection. Sometimes protection looks like restraint. And sometimes the bravest thing someone can do for you is stop you gently and ask for a promise. So I ask you this quietly, the way Auntie Me always does. If someone you trusted stopped you on the edge of an important day and said, "Promise me," would you listen? Or would you assume nothing could go wrong? If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of a moment when intuition or love changed the course of your life, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you're walking through your own complicated family story, know this: you're allowed to pause. You're allowed to protect your direction, and you're allowed to arrive safely even if the road isn't what you expected. Thank you for listening.